How about that? Back-to-back shows, we visit St. Mary's College, located in the rolling hills of Moraga, California, for another episode, not about a Gales basketball player, but my third show on a Gales baseball player. The other two, legendary World Series pitcher Duster Mayles and catcher Bud Sheely. So here we go, a show with a lot of jazz in it. Mostly baseball, some golf and basketball, a little football. I'll name drop a couple of actors and another mention of Elvis. Lately, I've seemed to be dealing with matters that are not cut and dry when really they should be, and finding an answer to a simple question, well, it goes unanswered. My recent shows on Odell Johnson and Leroy Doss, I was unable to find answers to my queries about the two Gales basketball legends. Here's another situation where I didn't get an answer to a simple question. What is the player I'll be talking about today's ethnicity? Are these unanswered questions due to poor research on my part? Could be. Could also be some of the players I profile are pretty obscure and not easy to find information on them. To make matters worse, my research staff here has a problem with intermittent cell reception, which puts a kink in my thought process. I ran across today's player while researching MLB outfielder Bob Usher. They played together on the 1956 Padres and signed along with 7 other Padre players on side-by-side pages in Dad's autograph book. 4 of the players were named Bob, and that's how they signed, including today's player, a so-called foreign baseball player who was born in Mexico. His name? Robert Chandler Greenwood. Why, that doesn't sound like your usual Spanish or Mexican name. First of all, it's not. It's a very typical American name of English heritage. Second of all, he goes by Bob, not Roberto, and his nickname is Greeny, not Verde. Thirdly, I don't think he really is what we call a foreigner. I believe him to be an American whose family just happened to be visiting Mexico when his mom gave birth. My second question, is his mom Mexican? Never did find out. But just because you were born in a country, that doesn't make you from that country. Nor does being a so-called native of that country make you one of them as far as ancestry. In other words, because Bob was born in Mexico doesn't automatically make him Mexican, any more than me being born in China makes me a Chinaman. Yet, everywhere you look on the internet, it either says he was a Mexican baseball player, born in Mexico, or has origins in Mexico. Another question would be, did Bob speak Spanish? Most players want to be remembered and known for what they did on the field, not for being born in a certain country. But seems that's how it is for Bob Greenwood, who is cited as the first person born in Mexico that went on to play college baseball in America. Bob did that in 1947 at St. Mary's College. I can also say for certain is that NFL Hall of Famer 49er John Henry Johnson was the first black football player at St. Mary's College. Just don't ask me who was the first black basketball player at the school. And you can't rely on Google for an accurate answer. It says Leroy Doss was the first black basketball player, yet Odell Johnson was at the school at the same exact time. Another Google inaccuracy, it said Leroy Doss started school in 1956, but I showed Dad's game day program from 1955 that listed both players. That's a big difference. And it's not just me that waffles on the subject. St. Mary's historians do as well. You know how the school decided who was the first black student? They looked through old school newspapers and yearbooks and found a picture of Robert Vaughn, who was obviously black and is considered the first black student at the school. The caveat here is that's when St. Mary's was located in Oakland, and they didn't move to Moraga until 1928. In defense of the school's record keeping, the private religious college did not keep track of students by ethnicity. Sometimes I misspeak or say something incorrect, especially when I speak off the cuff and don't stick to the script. I've caught some mistakes, and if it's not a major blunder, rather than reshoot and rehandle game day programs and an autograph book from 8 decades ago, I will instead write a cheesy correction or excuse in the description to stop any possible legal proceedings. But really, time is short. So it's at this point in the show I will say, Now, back to today's man of the moment, Bob Greenwood, aka Greenie, a righty pitcher who made his MLB debut on April 21st, 1954 with the Philadelphia Phillies, and a year to the day later made his last MLB appearance. With a name like Greenwood, the nickname Greenie only makes sense. But standing at 6'5" and weighing 200 pounds, maybe he was called Greenie because he was tall like a tree, or as they say in Spanish, Palo Alto, which means tall tree. Born 1928 in Cananea, Sonora, Mexico. Unless they're famous or something notable happened in their childhood, most profiles don't mention elementary school days, which is okay. But Bob's case is different with him being born in Mexico, and that brings up another question. Did he attend grade school in Mexico? That might shed some light on his ethnicity, and if he's bilingual or not. One thing I can say for certain about Bob's schooling, in 1946 he graduated from high school in California. He went to the famed Oakland Technical High School, known around here as Tech, where Bob played basketball and baseball. Here's just a few of Tech's famous alumni. Dirty Harry himself, Clint Eastwood, two of the four Pointer Sisters, NFL MVP 49ers John Brodie, Seattle Seahawk Marshawn Lynch, Minneapolis Laker five-time NBA All-Star Jim Pollard, historic baseball players Curt Flood and Rickey Henderson, Cookie Lavagetto, and Cleveland Indian J.W. Porter, who has his spot in MLB history, along with Larry Doby as the first interracial roommates. Google will tell you different. Bob Greenwood started at St. Mary's College in 1947 and was on both the Gales baseball and basketball teams. And by now, 6'5", and made sense he played college basketball. But Major League Baseball was his destiny, and the road to the majors started in 1949, signing as a free agent right out of college. Pitching Class C ball with two teams, the Phoenix Senators and Salt Lake City Bees, where he was teammates with Oakland boy Will Tessera. And I just did a show on Will, and recently made a phone call to his Ford dealership to ask some questions. I was put in touch with a lady who's worked there for 30 years. She was a bit leery at first, but after explaining to her I profile former players that signed Dad's autograph book, she warmed up to me and my glowing personality and was very helpful, offering to send me information. She told me Will is still sharp as a tack at 98 years old. And that was great to hear, and should give comfort to you seniors that life starts after 80 and 98 is the new 68. With Will being raised in Oakland, I should have asked the lady if he went to high school at Tech. Another one of my episodes with a lot of jazz in it. Or in Mexican-born Bob Greenwood's case, a lot of mariachi. But was Bob even Mexican? Maybe he hated a large brass horn section with 20 guitars and a bunch of guys in matching black suits and big hats yelling, "Hey!" and instead preferring crooners like Tony Bennett, Johnny Mathis, and Elvis. Greenie was back with the Phoenix Senators for all of 1950 before being picked up by the Philadelphia Phillies prior to the 51 season. They sent him back to Salt Lake City, where he was impressive in his 32 appearances, going 21-7 while pitching 256 innings. He was with the AAA Baltimore Orioles to start 1952 with Buddy Kerr, who's known for ending pitcher Ewell Blackwell's MLB win streak at 16. Nippy Jones was on this team, and a few years away from turning himself into a Milwaukee Braves legend with his 1957 World Series Game 4 at-bat. But Greenie wasn't with Buddy and Nippy for long. Most of his 52 season was with the Tri-City Braves, single A, going 16-10. Bob would once again return to a team that he had played on before and probably knows where to eat while living in each city. Because he rejoined the AAA Orioles for all of 1953. And if you want to talk durable, for 3 straight years, Greenie threw 23 complete games each season while in the Phillies farm system. 1954 was a year of highs and lows for Bob Greenwood. with the highlight being called up to the majors by the Philadelphia Phillies and would stick with them all season, making 12 appearances with 4 starts. As a big league pitcher, Bob had one win. And what do I always say? One is better than none. Now, for the bad part of Bob's 1954. The low point was a car wreck that almost ended his career. And you always hate to hear about a player whose career was derailed not because of anything he did, but just happened to be in the wrong place at the right time. Bob and his teammate Willie Puddinhead Jones were driving home from the ballpark when another car ran a stop sign and smashed into their car. Bob's arm was injured bad enough that he never fully recovered from the accident. Though he continued to pitch, he struggled for the next few seasons, hampered by the injury for the rest of his career. He started the 55 season still with the Phillies, got into one game and got blasted in that game, and would spend the rest of the season with the San Francisco Seals, where he had 42 appearances and 15 starts, but completed only 5, going a disappointing 5-15. Pitched for 2 AAA teams in 1956, the San Diego Padres and Miami Marlins, and it was in Miami Bob got to hang out in the bullpen with Satchel Paige, who is 49 years old and at this point more of an attraction. The Miami Marlins vice president was Sport Shirt Bill Veeck, who always had a gimmick up his sleeve, and this one was a doozy and a real treat for the fans, unless you were wearing white. For Satchel Paige's first appearance with the Marlins, Sport Shirt Bill went over the top when he hired a helicopter to bring Satchel into the ballpark and drop him off on the mound. Another promotional stunt brought to you by Bill Veeck. Turned out to be a mistake, as the infield dirt went everywhere and they would have to land in the outfield. Satchel said he would never do that again. This is the kind of thing Sport Shirt Bill was known for. Good or bad, he kept it lively. And for 2 years at that Marlins team and that ballpark had a unique atmosphere for sure. Whether it was a rocking chair in the bullpen for old Satchel or pitching coach Bubba Church's dog in the dugout that would howl every time the national anthem was played. No stats listed for Greeny in 1957, but he did pitch for the 1958 AA Tulsa Oilers in the Texas League, where he started 31 games, going 14-13. That winter, the Mexican-born player pitched down in the Venezuela for Pastora in the Occidental Winter League, playing with Bobby DiPietro, a.k.a. the Rigatoni Rifle. Bobby is a local San Francisco boy whose claim to fame is tied to Mickey Mantle. Bob Greenwood was in the Sally League for 1959, starting 25 games for the Asheville Tourists, playing with the unibrow Frank Zuppo and Yankee pitcher Alan Two-Gun Gettle, who appeared on TV during the heyday of TV westerns. And like the Rigatoni Rifle, Two-Gun Gettle has a show coming up. The guy they called Greeny, whose nickname, like most, the origin is not explained, would wrap up his 11 seasons of pro ball by starting 29 games with the 1960 Chattanooga Lookouts, playing with Vern Morgan and one of my favorite players and a true war hero, Spook Jacobs. Overall, as a minor league pitcher, Bob Greenwood made 344 pitching appearances with a record of 114 wins and 119 losses. He pitched 102 complete games and had 18 shutouts. So like quite a few players do when they retire, Bob kept his spikes on and would swap his mitt for a small glove, and instead of swinging a bat, would now swing a golf club. As a pro baseball player, Greeny usually swung his bat unsuccessfully, but when it came to swinging his golf club, Greeny was great. Though not on the PGA circuit, he was a one-handicap golfer, meaning Bob was real good. Good enough that for years he was a club pro at a few golf courses around the San Francisco Bay Area. I would say maybe that's where Greeny got his nickname, but he already had that name before he was a golfer. Bob was one who suffered from asthma his entire life and would pass away from pneumonia in 1994 at the age of 66. And another ball player with not much information about his life, and another episode where I did not get a definitive answer to a straightforward question, in this case on whether or not Bob is Mexican. He is cited in a few places as the first person born in Mexico to play college baseball in America. For some clarity, Luis Gomez is cited as the first ethnic Mexican born in Mexico to play college baseball in the U.S. He did that in 1971 as a UCLA Bruin. And for what it's worth, I got that information off Google, so make of that what you will.